Raise, brothers. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with Thee know he is one with every other. Good morning. Is it on? Hello? Yes. This morning we will have a session on the theme of principles of the higher life. And because this is Symposium, we all three of us has been given the same title. But I'm sure we will all approach the subject in our own ways. If the ways are similar, I think we really have some kind of other connection than we thought before. But that's unity then. The Symposium persons will be Mr. Richard Sell, Mrs. Manju Sundaram, and Ms. Marja Artamaa. Richard Sell was kind enough to accept being in this Symposium in a quite short notice, because Mr. Antonio Girardi, who has accepted earlier, could not arrive to Adyar. So we send very warm greetings to Mr. Girardi from Italy, the General Secretary of Italian section, and also to members in Italy. I have known Mr. Richard Sell only a few days, and I can assure you that he has shown to be a very fine man, fine and sincere theosophist, as I think that all sincere theosophists actually are. I have no doubt about that. Richard Sell was born into a theosophical family and first joined the society when he was 16 years old. He is president of HPB Lodge in Auckland, New Zealand, and he is a member of a number of governing bodies in the New Zealand section. Richard works with his wife Renee in supporting and energizing the Theosophical Order of Service in New Zealand. Richard has particular interest in the transformative process of character building as one attempts to make theosophy a living power in their life. I invite you to have your talk.
Thank you very much, Maria. Mr. President, brothers and sisters, good morning. It's an honour and a privilege to be speaking this morning on such a wet start to the day. The Delphic oracle of ancient Greece famously said, "Man, know thyself." Such a simple statement, but so incredibly hard to do, as we are blinded by the illusion of the material world we live in. Mankind increasingly places itself in opposition to the divine life, often ignorant of universal law. We are under the delusion that we can shape and mould reality to our own aims, desires and goals. En masse, humanity does this, largely through ignorance, desire and selfishness. If we trace these three attributes back to their root, we will see that their cause is actually one of wrong perception. The perception being that we are separate and not one. The links of interconnectedness are not visible to the eye. It is something that is perceived by the heart. And as the Upanishads state, this is the truth of truths, the unity of life. And so we continue on with the wearisome journey we call life, not knowing that another path exists. Annie Besant explains this natural evolutionary state. She said, men and women are surrounded on every side by objects of desire, which evoke the desire to possess them. It stimulates exertion, inspires effort, and thus creates qualities such as strength, intelligence, perseverance, and fortitude. Throughout the treading of the path of forthgoing, the desire for fruit is the necessary and blameless motive for exertion. Without this, the man at this stage of evolution becomes lethargic and does not evolve. At some stage in the soul's long journey, however, the personality opens up to the urgings of the immortal soul. It begins to look for something more meaningful and lasting beyond the material plane. The man searches for truths previously ignored but in plain sight, and for those hidden deeper within. We start to ask ourselves the big questions, such as, why am I here? Who am I? And what is the purpose of life? This inner urging is well described in by Rabbi Kusha when he says, our souls are not hungry for fame, comfort, wealth or power. Those rewards create almost as many problems as they solve. Our souls are hungry for meaning, for the sense that we have figured out how to live so that our lives matter, so that the world will at least be a little bit different from our having passed through it. Our yearning for spiritual enlightenment sees us begin to step out of the halls of ignorance and into the halls of learning. How is the aspirant to go about treading these important steps? It is Annie Besant that said we need not change anything in our life to become spiritual, but we must change our attitude to life. She also said the notion that our little life as a separate, independent unit, fighting for its own hand against countless separate, independent units, is a delusion of the most tormenting kind. So long as we thus see the world and life, peace broods far off on an inaccessible pinnacle. When we feel and know that all ourselves are one, then peace of mind is ours without any fear of loss. All our troubles arise from thinking of ourselves as separated units. Madame Blavatsky says this separateness which we feel between ourselves and the world of living beings around us is an illusion, not a reality. She says that there is but one self in all the infinite universe, and what we men call self is but the illusionary reflection of the one self in the heaving waters of earth. She continues that true occultism is the destruction of the false idea of self, and therefore true spiritual perfection and knowledge are nothing else but the complete identification of our finite selves with the great all. It follows, therefore, that no spiritual progress at all is possible except by and through the bulk of humanity. It is only when the whole of humanity has attained happiness that the individual can hope to become permanently happy. For the individual is an inseparable part of the whole. For spiritual perfection and spiritual knowledge can only be reached on the spiritual plane. In other words, only in that state in which all sense of separateness, all selfishness, all feeling of personal interest and desire has been merged in the wider consciousness of the unity of mankind. Therefore, each individual must learn for himself, through trial and suffering, to discriminate what is beneficial to humanity, and this happens in proportion to his developing spirituality. As he conquers all selfishness, his mind will open to receive the guidance of the divine monad within, his higher self, for which there is neither past nor future, but only an eternal now. For the personality, lifting the veil that covers these perennial truths can be achieved in a number of ways. One of the central concepts in Theosophy that leads to the disillusion of ignorance and brings one closer to reality is self-transformation. A key component of self-transformation, one that is under everybody's control, or at least should be, is our own character. We are mainly ruled by the lower selves, the personality. Our character is a reflection of the soul's ability to impress this personality with its influence. After our earthly incarnation, we find Devachan as a life of assimilation, where the aspirations of mental and moral experiences gathered here on earth are worked into the texture of the soul. These faculties become the powers, the qualities, capacities and tendencies for its future lives on earth. The vital importance of purifying one's character over many lives is made very clear by Mrs. Besant. She said, "Let me remind you of the building of the character, which is to be a distinct and positive building, which this candidate in the outer court will set before himself. We have seen already that he is to have been in past lives a virtuous and religious man. That is, he will have already realised that nothing of absolute vice must have its place in him. That if any tendency towards positive evil is still there, they must be completely and entirely rooted out. Into the court of the temple, utterly unhewn stones cannot be brought for this building. The hewing must have been going on during many previous lives. Much work must have been done on the characters before they become fit to be built at all, even in the outer court of such a temple." We can see by this the enormous amount of hard work facing the aspirant, and we may well ask, how should we go about pursuing such an illustrious goal? Fortunately for us, the razor-edged path is littered with helpful gems to be gathered up by the earnest and watchful seeker. The spiritualizing of one's nature is an epic battle between matter and spirit, but more precisely, it is a battle fought most fiercely within the mind. Thought arises before desire. It is not outer stimulus that arouses the organ. The thought acts upon the brain, and then desire awakens. This age in which we live is the age of the mind, and we have already heard from Madame Blavatsky's The Voice of the Silence. The mind is the great slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. This is no easy task, to transcend the mind, to see anew with help from the mind. This is where the battle is fought for right viewing and perceiving. Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote on this right view or outlook on life. He said, "Our happiness and the happiness of those around us depend on our right degree of right view. Touching reality deeply, knowing what is going on inside and outside of ourselves, is the way to liberate ourselves from suffering. that is caused by wrong perceptions. Right view is not an ideology, a system, or even a path. It is the insight we have into the reality of life, a living insight that fills us with understanding, peace, and love. Right view or right perception is the first step on Buddha's noble eightfold path. This is followed by right aspiration, possessing an informed heart and feeling mind that are free to practice letting go through the exertion of our own will to change. Right speech, speaking the truth in a helpful and compassionate way. Right conduct, living a life consistent with our values. These are the 5 precepts. Right livelihood, earning a living in a way that does not hurt or exploit others. Right effort, directing our effort to the transformative path of creative healing action that fosters wholeness. Right mindfulness, recognising the value of the moment, living in the now. And right concentration, expanding our consciousness through meditation. As these lessons of right perception are assimilated, a greater understanding of what lies before the aspirant is revealed. He or she will seek to eliminate known character flaws as they become more easily recognisable. Madame Blavatsky points the way clearly in the Golden Stairs, articulating the qualities we should be aspiring to. A clean life, an open mind, a pure heart, an eager intellect, an unveiled spiritual perception, a brotherliness for all, and so forth. These rules and signposts on the road that are given in both the Golden Stairs and the Buddha's Eightfold Path, or the Middle Way, are a wonderful guide to living and discovering our true nature. The reason for aspirants learning about the steps on the path and other interior experiences is so that they may be helped by the knowledge in their daily lives and thereby deliberately shape their thoughts, speech and conduct according to the new understandings they have attained. For example, our general attitude towards life will determine a great deal according to the laws of attraction. As we attract the same type of energy we put out, it is important to radiate positive energy and love towards others, for this is what we will attract back. Those who are bitter and resentful, always thinking of the negative, will receive back negative energies. Therefore, we are the makers of our own ignorance or illumination. Others may help, but ultimately it is ourselves who must lift the veil to reveal the light. The poet Khalil Gibran, who penned the well-known book The Prophet, wrote, "The veil that clouds your eyes shall be lifted by the hands that wove it." So attaining the right attitude of mind for somebody trying to spiritualise their life is very important. This necessary mental outlook is one of complete detachment from objects of sense and desire, renunciation of possessiveness, and of the spirit of acquisition and self-centeredness. Personal disinterestedness is very difficult to attain, as we live in a world where we are brought up with values of competitiveness, materialism, and the pressure to make a good life for oneself and one's family. How may then we approach this necessary step of character refinement? One of our chief adversaries in this arena is our conditioning. Conditioning arises from factors such as our culture, the society we live in, our parents, our dependency on our own emotional reactions, and holding rigid mindsets. It is vital to be ever watchful of this lifelong conditioning and the resulting incorrect habits formed. Our task at hand, therefore, is the breaking up of these old patterns, the formation of right new patterns. We may do this by being ever watchful of our thoughts and behaviours. We know that every character trait has two polar opposites, a positive and a negative aspect. Some examples of these are love and hate, courage and fear, serenity and anxiety, modesty and pride, and so forth. By placing our efforts on the positive aspect, we provide energy to that quality. By not dwelling on the negative aspect, we thus deprive it of power. As we focus on the positive, we start to build a new right habit. So, for example, if I feel I have a hard exterior shell, I am unapproachable, then I can start to remove this barrier by being open and friendly. By making an effort along this line, even if I don't feel like it at first, I start to form a new right habit. If I have anger inside, then I'll try to develop calmness and harmony. As the spiritual aspirant progresses through many incarnations, burning out the lower nature and bringing forth more of the higher self into the light, he or she will experience development in depth, especially of the mind, bringing the ability to penetrate the deeper aspects of the doctrines and the deeper issues of human life and human relationships. A more deeply thoughtful personality should arise, one who is more quiet and calm. The severe schooling which the adversities of life provide for aspirants on the path will prove increasingly fruitful and useful as they meet these in a kindly instead of overly critical attitude towards others. As we progress onwards, we find intellectual pride can prompt a fall, and the aspirant must be forever watchful of this. Pride and a sense of superiority is one of the last of the lower natures to be cast off. It is indeed very difficult with all its subtleties. Therefore, the Delphic oracles provided just warning. Be on guard is blazoned over the doorway leading to the outer court. Watch closely is written on the walls within. Know thyself appears above the doorway leading to the sanctuary. Gautama Buddha describes this transformative process simply and poetically. He said, though he should conquer 1,000 men in the battlefield 1,000 times, yet he, indeed, who would conquer himself is the noblest victor. Not to do any evil, to cultivate good, to purify one's mind. This is the advice of the Buddhas. Better a single day of life, seeing the reality of arising and passing away, than 100 years of existence remaining blind to it. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The thought manifests as the word manifests as the deed develops into habit, and habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. He is able who thinks he is able. We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. When the mind is pure, joy follows like a shadow that never leaves. As this new man springs forth, he may become useful in the Master's work. For truly, one who has not conquered oneself can be of little help to others. In the voice of the silence, Madame Blavatsky says, the life of man approaching the path is marked by unselfish service to others, by his willingness to sacrifice all for the good of others, by his readiness to give up all that worldly men account valuable, and devotion to an ideal or to a cause which he believes to embody the right. As we travel the paths of service, we hear more clearly the voice within, growing ever louder as we move within the flowing stream of nature. In harmony with it, and with other sentient beings. To proclaim the truths of the higher life and to live them is the service required of all of us. Sri Ram says in his beautiful little book, Thoughts for Aspirants, when all life becomes a poem of service, in the true, pure, inward sense, then all life grows exceedingly beautiful. It unfolds like a flower. How magical. So in conclusion, to benefit mankind is our ultimate aim. To do so, we learn in truth that we can only start and finish with ourselves. For eons, mankind has tried and failed to change others. When we learn that by changing ourselves, we start to change the world, we will have discovered a great secret. As the little selves dissolve away, the higher self begins to dominate and radiate outwards. Equilibrium and harmony become keynotes of our life. We strive to live for others, unruffled by the seething, turbulent waters of the world. We become workers in the divine plan, in tune with it, progressing the whole of humanity. Madame Blavatsky wrote that no spiritual progress at all is possible except by and through the bulk of humanity. And so, this is our small part in the great plan. What other part can there be? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. Our next speaker is Mrs. Manju Sundaram. Mrs. Manju I have known maybe 10 years and I am beloved to her. How you say it in English? Okay. Manju has took voluntary retirement in 2005 as head of the vocal music department, Vasant Kanya Mahavidyalaya, Varanasi, after having served the institution for nearly 26 years. Along with active participation in the field of music, have been closely and actively associated with the cultural, educational and philanthropic work of the Theosophical Society. He has also visited abroad in many events, and for the last 10 years she has been traveling extensively all over India to deliver lectures, to conduct study, dialogue, workshops, etc., on subjects related to education, culture, deeper aspects of life and human values, and music, especially the spiritual aspect of music. All of which has proved to be extremely enriching for one's whole being without and within. Please, Manju.
Revered President, dear Marja Artamaa, who chairs this session, Brother Richard Sale, my co-speaker, all my respected elders and my dear friends, a very good morning to you all. There come in one's life occasions when the consciousness becomes suddenly illumined with the recognition of something which rises above, reaches beyond the trivialities of one's daily happenings. Fleeting though they may be, these are the moments of unfoldment of the vision of unity, moments which open one's heart to all the mysteries of nature and the limitless expanse of life. One recalls, friends, with wonder and delight, many incidents which have left an indelible impression on one's heart, have touched the deepest regions of one's being, and most importantly, have offered an awe-inspiring glimpse into the ever-effulgent planes and dimensions of existence. And I would like to share just one of them with you, friends. This happened in the year 2009. An 8-year-old boy, while having breakfast one morning, asked his mother a question. He asked, "Amma, mother, Amma, do I have to believe in God? Do I have to believe in God?" His mother, who was my student at Varanasi and is now a renowned classical dancer and choreographer, was naturally not prepared for such a question. She was silent for a few moments, then said to her son, "No, child, certainly not. No one compels you to believe in God or not to believe in God. It is entirely up to you." Then continuing in a tender voice, she said, "But there are certain things which I would like you to reflect on. You see this marvelous earth, this extraordinary beauty in nature around us, the lofty mountains, the unfathomable oceans, the awesome deserts, the dense, impenetrable forests, the sun, the moon, the twinkling stars, the animals, birds, and of course, our fellow human beings. All these have been there. No one knows since when. Do you think we humans created all this, son? You or I or people like us? Don't you think there must be something much, much greater in intelligence, energy and power? Something great and wise working behind all this creation?" Saying this, the mother, not waiting for her son's response, went her way, and the child went his, both in silence. 2 years passed, mind you, 2 years. The boy was now 10 years old. The mother was choreographing a dance drama based on the life and philosophy of the great saint, poet and seer Kabir. And on this particular day, she had taken up one of Kabir's well-known songs, the gist of which is thus: "Why and where do you search for me, my friend? Neither in the temple, nor in the mosque, neither in Kaaba, nor even on Mount Kailash will you find me. I am not in the rituals and ceremonies that you perform, nor am I in the practices of yoga and austerities. You will find the reality in a moment, if you want, as I am within your own being. I am the very breath of all breaths." The boy was sitting there, watching intently the rehearsal, and also listening to his mother's song with rapt attention. And when the rehearsal was over, the boy quietly went to his mother and said, "Amma, I believe in this God." After 2 years, "Amma, I believe in this God." He then paused for another few moments and then said again, "No, Amma, I do not believe in him. I do not believe in him because that I am. Because that I am." A 10-year-old boy. What had happened to the boy? Mind you, the mother had not explained the meaning or the content therein. But surely something had shaken him. Some chord had struck deep within him. What was it that was going on within him constantly these past 2 years? Questioning, inquiring, exploring, having dialogues with his own inner being, his soul perhaps. And when he was ready to receive, then in those receptive moments, the truth or God or the Supreme Reality manifested itself in the guise of a profound song. The pure, innocent consciousness in the young body, still free from the fetters of the material life and all its webs of experiences, intuitively and instinctively could be and was a witness to the all-pervasiveness of the One. He was no more a separate entity. His individual consciousness merged into the very fountainhead of that universal consciousness. Is it not that in this very state lies the true fulfillment of the individual soul? Losing itself completely to the indivisible? Is not the tiny drop the ocean itself? One vividly remembers, friends, I may tell you here that I was brought up in the premises of the Krishnamurti Foundation at Varanasi. I studied there, I taught there, my parents were teachers there. So there are very, very vivid memories, and one remembers Krishnaji's visits during winters to the educational institutions at Rajghat, Varanasi. His talks were held in the beautiful assembly hall of the children's school, overlooking the Ganga. During his talks every morning between 9 and 10:30 a.m., 3 or 4 trains invariably passed over the bridge, which is at a distance of about 3 kilometers as the crow flies. The loud noise of the rattling train every time as it passed over the bridge made the windows of the hall rattle too, and it was difficult to listen to Krishnaji properly. During those 2-3 minutes every time, Krishnaji became silent. But he did not stop abruptly. He just let his words, his voice fade away in the background. Perhaps to receive and welcome the sound of the train and all that came with it. There was not an iota of resistance, annoyance or opposition. What one saw and felt was the feeling of deep reverence, humility, and the spontaneous acceptance of and loving surrender to those moments. The assembly hall was filled with the resonances of a deep, vibrant silence. The noise of the train over the distant bridge was very much a part of this silence, this stillness. Along with the sound of the train, one also felt the ethereal presence of the massive columns supporting the bridge, the tranquil waters of the river Ganga, the chilly morning breeze, as also the warmth of the bright sun. Nothing was separate, broken up, or fragmented. There was not a note that was discordant or jarring. All these were like the strains of the one melody that flowed there. The sound really deepened the inner silence, silence that had tremendous energy, vitality, and an overpowering effect on one's entire being. It was an atmosphere that offered an opportunity to know more of oneself, to learn anew, to listen, to see, to feel and perceive intensely beyond the physical, the mundane, beyond the immediate or the distant. It was seeing beyond the horizons. And what else could revelation be? Revelation, which is certainly neither a part nor an aspect of some intellectual or speculative understanding, but which hints at the unfolding of something immense. It is this revelation that lets one have a glimpse into the realms of that intelligence which is behind all this creation, the intelligence that manifests in subtlest of ways and forms, conveying messages, giving lessons, hints, instructions, guidance, hidden warnings, but above all, the intelligence that allows one a hesitant glance into the workings of the laws, as also into the unfathomable depths of the unity of the cosmic scheme, the cosmic plan. And it is in these moments that one realizes that man is not just a physical body, the eyes that see, the ears that hear, the body that hungers for food or water or sleep. Man has a mind that thinks, heart that throbs, aches or rejoices, and a soul that feels, perceives, envisions. The body does everything as a routine, but there do come some intensely enlightening moments when the physical body gives way to the deeply intuitive, instinctive sight of the soul, the heart, to see, to hear, and to perceive all that is beyond the limits and boundaries of the physical. One, however, poignantly observes that most of us have degenerated our lives into a mere drudgery, carrying the burden of existence, the lifeless burden of existence somehow, at times even lamenting and cursing it. Life reduced to a meaningless existence, totally devoid of happiness, contentment, goodness, beauty, and joy. But one has to come to the truth that life is not mere existence. Life is being alive to every moment, every situation, every happening. Contentment and happiness are not in what one gets, not in what is offered to one, but how one receives and responds to it. And it is here that one halts, one allows one's mind to be silent, and in these moments of repose, one suddenly sees the beauty of the statement, existence is a fact. Existence is a fact, but living is an art. Existence is a fact, but living is an art. Life is just what art is all about. In all creative arts is the constant, unhindered flow of harmony, rhythm and order. Harmony of line, colors and forms, of movement and silence, of melody and rhythm. Harmony of perspectives, dimensions and proportion. In fact, all creative arts are but the miniature symbols of the law, the order that govern and work behind the whole universe. And what else is life other than this? Life is essentially one universal harmony. Life is movement and rhythm. It is right proportion, right perspective, and right perception, along with the beauty and harmony of coexistence. There has to be in life a balance and blend of head and heart, of activity and repose, of power and wisdom. And it is this balance that brings about the understanding of the eternal principles of life, of its essential unity, its deep interconnectedness, its interdependency and togetherness in the widest and the deepest sense. Art is the creative response to life itself, giving oneself completely to something, surrendering one's narrow self unconditionally to something with a sense of sacredness and reverence. I wondered, friends, many a time while reflecting on the given subject, principles of the higher life, as to what that state could be, that state of being, that level of consciousness, the plane that one dwelt in. And suddenly I was reminded of a beautiful and very profound line by Rabindranath Tagore, in which he talks about faith. Faith. He says, faith is the bird that feels the light. Faith is the bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. Faith is the bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. The bird does not wait to see the light with its tiny eyes, because it has already seen it with the eyes of the soul. It has already felt the light deep within. It knows, intuitively it knows that the light is there. The bird knows that the magnificent sun will emerge from the depths of the horizon and joyfully sings the welcome song. What is that state? It has nothing to do with intellectual understanding, intellectual speculation, arguments, reasoning, logic, trying to prove something with evidences. Nothing of that sort. It is the domain of intuition. It is the vision of intuition. It is the piercing, penetrating insight into the realms of reality. And this is the unfoldment of that luminous consciousness in the light of which one sees in a flash the whole. One sees God, one sees reality, one sees that which is limitless, one shares in the immeasurable, one is the immeasurable. And faith, what is that faith? Faith is that absolute, complete, unconditional surrender to the unmanifest, to the invisible, yet surrender to the all-pervading, to the ever-present, to the omnipotent. That perhaps is the state that we refer to as that higher plane of living, that higher life. The higher life, or if I may say the inner life, is not opposed to worldly life, not alienated from daily life. Higher life is a richer, fuller life, a complete life, a life that offers a clear vision, a fuller realization of the inner laws of the universe. One then realizes that every manifestation in this universe is there with a sacred purpose, is a special node to add to the harmony. Everyone has a unique role to play to accomplish that purpose, to bring it to fruition. One is then open to an entirely different realm of consciousness. One's thoughts, feelings, actions, everything is in complete accordance with and in a perfect attunement with the laws and with the music of the universe. One's body, mind and soul all transform into one significant musical note in the great symphony. One then no more carries the burden of existence. The surge of creative energy, with all its motivating power and force, transforms mere existence into a new life, a meaningful life, a richer and fuller life, a life in which every moment brings a new inspiration, a new hope, a new vitality, and a new beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manju Sundaram. Now we switch to a bit different kind of talk. So I will talk about the work with ourselves and work without a thought for fruit as part of principles in the higher life. We know that spiritual traditions include teachings for a higher life and practices for self-transformation. Many such practices aim at preparing our qualities to better reflect a higher life. The purpose of this work is to purify ourselves from unnecessary habits and to purify our minds from tendencies which prevent the inner qualities from shining through. These unnecessary habits, for example, are laziness, unkind thoughts, and aggressiveness, which are truly hindrances for higher reflections. They occupy the mind and even the body without us being aware of it. The mind and the rain is increasing, competing with my voice. Thanks. The mind easily finds reasons not to start with self-education now, saying, I'll start tomorrow when I am in a bit better condition and when I have more time. And that often goes on far too long from the point of view of the spirit. But there comes a moment when one realizes that this does not work. That is not what one is here for. I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to think negatively. I shouldn't get irritated. I must do something. The will of self is there, just waiting for cooperation, and a new attitude then flows into life. On the other hand, in addition to working to get rid of something of us, there are practices that strengthen us and make our inner qualities blossom. These practices make us realize our deeper connection with reality, truth, and happiness. One practice that nowadays is quite widespread is practicing mindfulness, learning to be present in the now. If we practice mindfulness to our physical awareness, recognizing emotions and being aware of our thinking without any mental effort to change them to another, but letting them be part of body and mind consciousness, then the whole true being of us cures itself. It is like letting things happen. The higher consciousness knows what is best for us. There is peace of mind and a firm connection with a deeper existence. Letting go is not a portal for laziness. On the contrary, the whole being, from body to intellect, is internally activated to a state of awareness and alertness. Yet, mindfulness is an integral part of something that we practice, like yoga and learning to meditate. It deals with our constitution to really know about ourselves. Real meditation is not a matter of practice. It is itself. We can practice meditation trying to find the best ways for us to meditate. But there comes a stage, a moment, when we do not practice, we just meditate. Similarly, one can practice being courageous, but when one is courage itself, then it is no longer a practice, but it is a quality inherent in us that works whenever necessary. One can practice thinking and talking truthfully, but when one is truthful, no practice is needed, because one is truthful from the bottom of one's own heart. I am going to consider two principles. They are truthfulness and working without the desire for fruit. We will see that these are interconnected with a changing world, which needs strong spiritual and devoted workers to benefit humanity. Let's look at truthfulness first, which is the principle of principles because it is rooted to truth. It is not a virtue to be practiced. It is much more. It is a principle that underlies every action we undertake and every thought we express. If we are not truthful, we are drawn towards the activities of the mind. I mean that then our mind is not free for higher thinking. Can we practice truthfulness? I believe that we need to be truthful. We need to set our mind always in such a way that we are able to see and talk truthfully without any further options. Many times we come to realize that we are not true to ourselves, but are creating excuses. A truthful mind does not pretend to know. The moment one realizes that saying something untruthfully in order to get out of a certain situation, or what is worse, shifting responsibility to someone else in order to save one's own skin, when that moment comes, we will realize that we can repair and undo what was said only by admitting that we were wrong. That causes no harm to admit I was wrong. In our changing world, with this enormous amount of information and information technology, truthfulness is an ever important feature. It may sound strange to combine information techniques with truthfulness when we are talking about spiritual principles. But let me explain. In the news and on the internet, the spoken and written word spreads quickly and widely. The mind can change the meaning of an entire article by extracting a specific paragraph from its context. It is evident that most of us have seen and experienced this. What does the curious mind do? It prefers to read more about the false part, which narrows down the thinking, and it tries to fit that extracted part into reality. It starts to create its own interpretations and soon believes what has been extracted. That is the danger. But the other aspect of dealing with the news on TV or on the internet and written articles in newspapers or magazines is the great possibility to share knowledge and understanding. It is possible to write beautifully and to share important and relevant notices. The manner in which we read and write depends entirely on how we do this and on how sincere desire we are to uplift life. That should be our practice. We ought to learn to listen and to express ourselves with goodwill and pure intention. Sometimes it is very disappointing to read newspaper articles from which we see that the sources are intentionally evil. It came to my mind this morning that it would be good if the reporters would form groups like scientists do, groups which would concentrate to find news which have high and ethical code in writing about societies and its development. I think it should be embedded to the reporters' ethical code. The reporters could help the world much more by working with such high ethical standards as the Theosophical Society represents. And we are willing to work in that direction, to uplift the humanity, to tell what is important, to tell what is necessary for people to understand about the life, to be truthful. Most of all, there must be a will for truthfulness in our heart. Will is one of the three aspects of the Logos. Our mere being is to reflect that aspect. The will of the Logos does not want to harm anything, but instead it wants to bring manifestation to its purest and highest reality. The second principle of the higher life, which I here bring, is to become aware for what and why we are working. The Bhagavad Gita speaks about action and actionlessness. All work is to be done without a thought of fruit from the work. Can one work without a wish for success, position, or fame? Yes, when in one's heart the altruistic wish to serve arises, whatever type of work comes about. Nowadays, large companies alter their organization charts quite frequently in order to make their staff function better. More and more attention is given to the well-being of workers by, for example, sharing information about the various functions. That is very human and basically very theosophical. I have personally been involved in many organizational changes and have always considered them refreshing. New aspects, new ways of doing things, new horizons open up each time. These organizational changes are never done without a considerable amount of strategic planning and thinking. Those alterations reflect the changing world, and we need to become a part of it. They might not always be successful, but as long as the intention is good, there will always be another chance. One could imagine that for a theosophist, change is natural, because theosophists know that nothing is permanent. We are taught to have an open mind and a pure heart. Every change is a new possibility for realizing the work and for making the interaction between people easier. It is an excellent practice to work for the work itself, because it has to be done. not because one wants or requires something. That is theosophical principle to work for the cause. One can say, I am available, without any conditions or personal wishes. I do candidly hope that we are open and keen enough to welcome good changes with a sincere intention to develop theosophical work. Do you welcome those types of changes? Are you available for any good possibility that comes along? From what I have heard from theosophists, we are in favor of modifications and alterations in our changing world to spread theosophy and to make the higher life closer to humanity's aim. So perhaps we should train ourselves to reflect truth itself and to serve the cause because of the work itself. Thank you. And now I want to express my gratitude to Richard Sell and Manju Sundaram for their enlightening, refreshing and unity hugging talks. Isn't it? Thank you. The session is closed.